Welcome to Better and Green. Today we're giving you our Week 1 fantasy football rankings. I'm Ben, with me is Bobby. And if you guys would like some personalized information about your fantasy team, start sits, trade requests, anything like that, make sure you guys head over to Fantasy Sports Advice Network. We're over there. We have a page over there. We can answer your guys' personal questions along with other experts in the community. Check those guys out. And if you want a written copy of all of our player rankings, that's going to be available on bettergreen.com. That comes out Saturdays before the games. Bobby, getting into it. Episode 1, I've been wanting to do this show for years now. Last year, I almost pulled the trigger, but I said, I can't. I got too much going on. This year, I still have too much going on, but I'm an idiot, and we're going to do it anyways. Are you ready to get into some of these Week 1 plays that I have?
Yes, very excited to see what you think about how Week 1 is going to shape up.
All right, man. So Week 1, my quarterbacks that I have in the quarterback 1 spot is Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, CJ Stroud, Tua Tagovailoa, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Matt Stafford, rounding out my quarterback 1s. What do you think of my rankings so far? I think Jared Goff at 3 is going to get a lot of eyebrows raised, but they're at home. They're against Stat Padford, so I have Stat Padford as a quarterback 1 in this. Also, I just think that it's going to be a high-scoring game with a lot of fantasy output. What do you think about my QB1s?
I actually don't hate Jared Goff there, especially against the Rams. I am personally not a Rams guy. I think they're another one of those overrated teams, just me personally speaking. Everybody's still really high off the Super Bowl they won, which has been a few years now. It's like, yeah, great that you won a Super Bowl, but how many years has it been now? How much longer you got to rest on those laurels? And this is kind of a cutthroat sport, like most other sports, where it's a game of what have you done for me lately. Yeah, that's a great top 12 for Week 1. The only thing I possibly could take umbrage with would be, well, considering the defense they're playing, I don't know, because that defense could be pretty brutal for them, all things considered. It's been going both ways, most people seem to think, but maybe bump Purdy up to that 12 spot, but that Jets defense is pretty gnarly, and I have that in the home league, so yeah, I can't really argue with that because, once again, I'm having to remind myself we're talking about just Week 1. What do we think's going to happen in Week 1, how it's going to play out. And, yeah, that's a good top 12 for Week 1, just purely based off what's happening, because there's a lot of guys, like I'll give you one more example before we move on. Geno Smith at 22. I do think he's going to be greatly improved, and I say that as somebody who does not like Geno, as you know, at all. I even called it after he had his, forgot to write back season. I was like, this dude is not going to sustain that. He's going to crash to earth. He did. I think he will be better because of that offensive coordinator they brought in. I think the team is going to be elevated, but I think it's going to be a few weeks before we see the results of that. It's definitely not going to be a Week 1 transition. It's going to take a few games before they start to gel, kind of like it did for Lamar under Monken last season. They started off rough, but by mid to late season, they finally found their stride and made those improvements. So
I absolutely agree with both those guys being in the quarterback conversation, and especially with Brock Purdy, because I got Brock Purdy at number 13, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jane Daniels, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, and Kirk Cousins. I threw both the old injured guys at the very bottom, both of them going against just gnarly defenses in the 49ers, and Cousins with the Steelers. Sam Darnold, I think, is probably going to be under the radar for a lot of people, but I think a 2-quarterback, 12-man leagues, I think he's a more than viable option with Jefferson and some of the other options that they have there. Prescott being lower might raise some eyebrows too, but he's going against that Cleveland Browns defense that I think is good, and that Cowboys offensive line is worse, and with a worse running game this year as we're expecting, I think that Dak, after he had that amazing year last year, I think might be in for some regression, especially coming out first game against the Cleveland Browns. And we're seeing that also in the betting world, where the Browns are actually, I think at the moment, 2.5-point favorites. Besides that, Caleb Williams is my highest ranked rookie. I don't think a lot of people are going to have problems with him at 15. I think what people are going to have problems with is Jayden Daniels at 21. I know you're a big Jayden Daniels guy. Am I too low on him, or is that kind of like okay because he's because he's going against that Bucks defense and it's his first game as a rookie, first game head coach. It just scares me a bit. I would like to not start him if possible week 1.
Yeah, that's fair. I am very high on Jayden Daniels, but once again, I'm reminding myself just for pure week 1 purposes, it's not like we're looking at a whole season. I think that's very fair. The Bucks, as you mentioned, do have a pretty stout defense. And in addition to the other concerns, my biggest thing now since Dotson is traded, which was just such a head scratcher for me because you already only had McLaren and Dotson as your 2 receivers. The ghost of Zach Ertz is your starting tight end. I know Sanat's behind him, but when are you going to get him involved? How often is he going to get involved? And you got B-Rob and you got Eckler, but it's like, what are your other weapons, And that's going to be something interesting for Jayden Daniels to have to deal with in his first game as a rookie. And yeah, for all the reasons you said, I think that's why he's deserving of such a low spot on the list for week 1, just because it's going to be getting used to, okay, we don't have like Caleb Williams. It's like, well, why is Caleb Williams so high then? Caleb Williams actually has weapons. For all the faults of the Bears, they really are going all in on Williams this year. They've upgraded the offensive line. They brought in Keenan Allen. They brought in Odunze. They brought in DJ Moore. They have Cole Kmet there. They have Gerald Everett there. They have Swift there. They have so many weapons and a beefed-up offensive line. As far as I'm aware of, the Commanders or whatever the hell they're calling themselves nowadays still have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL right now with very marginal improvements made to it. So that's why Williams is higher. He's got way more weapons, better offensive line, an environment really cultivated around him to succeed. And that's not to say Washington is not helping Daniels succeed, but like I said, the whole Dotson thing alone, unless the guy's just really that shot, is just a bit of a head scratcher, and he just doesn't have the weapons in the offensive line around to really make him, pop off in my eyes going up against Tampa Bay week 1.
All right, let's move over to the running back. So my RB1s are Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, James Cook, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Travis Etienne, Rashad White, Kenneth Walker, Derrick Henry, and Devon Achane. This is a really mixed up list from if you're seeing ADP with Bijan down at 7. It's the Arthur Smith revenge game, man. I know he doesn't call the defense, but I'm just a little worried about how Atlanta's going to fare against Pittsburgh. And that defensive line also is going to be a match for the Atlanta Falcons offensive line. So I worry a little bit. And also, you still have Algier there that can steal some carries away. Saquon Barkley's got that good offensive line now and a good offense. They're, I believe, opening the season in Brazil this year. Doesn't change it too much for me, but I would like to see how Saquon looks week 1 before. I obviously have to start him, but I'm not going to put him up in top 3 yet. James Cook at 5. I'm really high on James Cook this year, man. They're against that Arizona team, and Josh Allen's going to need time to build chemistry with his weapons. So, this just seems like such a prime spot for James Cook. I think a lot of people will argue, he's not top 5. I feel like week 1 he is. I'm starting him over almost everybody. Kenneth Walker at 10 against the Broncos defense. I don't know. And then Derrick Henry also. I like Derrick Henry. That offensive line did get worse. They are against the Chiefs, but Derrick Henry he's shredded the Chiefs in the past. I think he can probably have a pretty decent game. I would put money on that he gets a touchdown in this game. And then Devon, man, I don't know. There's just a lot of mouths to feed there, but they're against Jacksonville, and I feel like you have to have him at a running back 1. I think a lot of people are probably going to scratch their heads that Gibbs isn't in the 1, and I bet that's probably something that you would bring up, but with that injury and Montgomery there and the fact this could become a really high-scoring game, I'll leak it a little bit. I got Gibbs at 13. I just couldn't fit him into the 1s. So what do you think about my first 12, Bobby?
My only complaint on a different note than what you were anticipating I was going to say with Gibbs is why isn't Montgomery either directly in front or directly behind him? Like until further notice, until the win. I'm not saying it just because I have Montgomery. Legitimately, this is what I've been saying to people who are not drafting yet or haven't drafted or whatever. I've been pounding this out, and I would still be saying it even if I didn't own him. But full disclosure, I do, and I got him for a third round pick before the season started last year in Antonio Gibson, so it was a robbery. But until further notice, until he gets shot or breaks a rib or a leg or whatever, they're interchangeable to me. And that sucks for people who take Gibbs so high. But everybody's like, oh, and I don't want to like talk bad about people, so I'm not going to give a specific example because there's only one person I like that said it, and everybody else is just a dumbass that said it. But like, you're looking for Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara for like those 3 years that you could start both of them comfortably on your roster and reap the benefits because they were always highly productive together, mutually beneficial. Yeah, they ate into each other a little bit just by the nature of being two great running backs in the same backfield, but you got great value on both of them. It's like, how do you not see Jamar Gibbs as Alvin Kamara and David Montgomery as Mark Ingram, down to the play style, down to the player comps that were made about Gibbs before he came into the league? This guy is most comparable to Kamara. Montgomery is that bruising hammerhead that's like the Mark Ingram to the flashy, receptive abilities of Jamar Gibbs. It's like, that's my only thing. It's like, I get why people are so high on Gibbs, especially if you're in a dynasty league. Of course, I'm going to be aiming for Gibbs in a dynasty league. But if you're playing redraft and you miss out on Gibbs, or you don't take an elite receiver with that first round pick or whatever, why aren't you waiting until you can get David Montgomery? Like hell, on some of the mocks we were doing before this, I was getting David Montgomery in like the fifth, sixth round.
Right.
Proverbially underrated dude. That's my only thing. Is eventually, yeah, it's going to end, but it took Mark Ingram 3 years with Alvin Kamara before he fell off a cliff. For 3 years, guys that owned both of them on their roster, they weren't having any, head scratching, oh my God, who am I going to start decisions. They were just like, I'll plug both of them in. It's like 2 years ago when I had Zeke and Pollard. I was like, I'll just plug both of them in, and whoever gets the touchdown gets the touchdown. The other one's going to get a crap ton of points from the reception, i.e. Pollard. It's like, it's one of the few backfields where you can comfortably do that. You can plug in both of them and not even have to sweat it.
Yeah. Lions comfortably led the league in rushing touchdowns the last 2 years. So, absolutely, they're
Right.
both viable. Talking about Gibbs, we're going to start off with him at 13, and then we'll go Josh Jacobs 14, and then Pacheco, James Conner, Aaron Jones, Gus Edwards, Joe Mix, Ramondre Stevenson, Jerome Ford, Zamir White, Alvin Kamara, and Javonte Williams to round out my RB2s. What do you think about these guys so far, Bobby?
Yeah, same thing. Put Montgomery over literally everybody you just said, at least for week one. Let me double check who they're going up against for week one, but it's like him and Gibbs are both going to eat for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Uh,
Lions against Rams.
oh, for sure. Rams defense. Yeah, I'm not too crazy about Rams defense. Like I said, the only thing that's concerned me is once again looking at it from week one, just going off of matchups, just who might have like hard matchups and everything. I still think you could comfortably put Montgomery over for sure over Harris, maybe not. Swift, maybe not. As much as I love Javonte, I think at least week one you could put him over Javonte. I think the Saints are going to be a slow start and dumpster fire. So over Kamara, over Zamir, maybe not Ford because Ford's going to get a crazy amount of opportunity. Stevenson, maybe not, just because once again Stevenson's going to get the ball rammed down his throat because they have
Right.
no receivers. I don't care who they drafted.
Right.
Definitely put him over Mixon. I think Houston is
Yeah.
100% going to air it out. Now, if
I
they have
didn't love that Mixon pick. You had to slot him in somewhere, but
right,
uh,
especially for week one, I think they're going
yeah.
to air it out way more. Edwards is intriguing because they're going to run the hell out of the ball. I would put
Hmm.
him over Jones. Connor, maybe not, because Connor, if he's going to do anything, it's going to be early season before he breaks down, which I
Against the Bills,
anticipate.
too,
Right,
and all
right.
those defensive pieces they lost.
And then Pacheco plays Baltimore D. I think I
Right.
read they lost a few starters. That's going to be rough, but Pacheco should still be decent. So I don't know that I'd put him over Pacheco since they did lose starters. And I do like Jacobs there. But you could put Montgomery over a few of these guys pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
comfortably. But yeah.
Well, let's get to Montgomery. So we're going to talk about Najee Harris, then DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery. There he is at 27. Zach Moss, Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard, Brian Robinson Jr., Devin Singletary, Jalen Warren, Austin Eckler, Raheem Mostert, and Ezekiel Elliott. We're starting to get to the flex / bench if you can guys here.
Right.
I think I draw that line at Eckler. I don't think I want to play really anybody underneath Eckler for week 1. I mean, Mostert, everybody saw how great he was last year. I just can't get behind like a 30, 31-year-old running back. Zeke, he's just a shell of himself. I like him more now that he's back on Dallas than when he was in New England, just because I think New England's a dumpster fire. If any of these guys are going to outperform, I think it might be Chuba Hubbard, because I believe that the Panthers had put their rookie on the PUP list, so he's going to miss the first 4 weeks. Yeah,
Yep, you're correct.
So Hubbard, I think he might get a lot more playing time than I expected, so we might need to bump him up a little bit. And once again, guys, these finalized rankings will come out the Saturday before the games every week, so you guys can get up-to-date information. I don't know, man. I don't love any of these guys, but what do you think?
I think that's fair to say after – did you say it was after Eckler you wouldn't be comfortable starting these guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Mostert, if he does do something, it'll be early once again. He's another guy I feel like is going to fall off rapidly, so the window to play him is so small. But week 1 even, 35 I feel is fair. Zeke, there's no way they roll out just him and Dowdle as their running backs. There's so many guys. They flew out Dalvin Cook.
I know.
Worked out. There's no way.
They don't want it.
Yeah, they can't. It would be criminal if that's how they roll with just Zeke and Dowdle for a whole damn season, man. Brown, I know a lot of people are really high on him. If it happens, it's not going to be in the first game. I don't think he's going to make that much of an impression. He'll be a guy that builds up. I'm a huge Tajay guy. Once again, I think he'll be a better as the season goes on guy. I don't think he's going to be out the gate.
Let's get into those guys here real quick. Yeah, you're okay. So the next guys are Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears, Rico Dowdle, Trey Benson, Antonio Gibson, Tyler Algier, Zach Charbonnet, Jaleel McLaughlin, Marshawn Lloyd, J.K. Dobbins, Blake Corum, and Bucky Irving. All these guys better left on your bench, but Bobby, sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to make sure we got that on there.
No, you're good. You're good.
People
I
can
was
see the
getting ahead of
graphic.
myself.
So you're good.
Yeah, I think same with these guys. You're pretty much right. I'm not comfortable starting them week 1. I don't disagree that some of them will get better with time. The age like wine, not milk. That's your Chase Brown. That's your Spears. Dowdle, I feel like, is going to end up like milk because, like I said, there's no way you just roll with him and Elliott as your 2 primary RBs for an entire football season. Because then if Zeke goes down, Dowdle's your RB1. If Dowdle goes down, Zeke's your RB1 in 2024. What are we doing? Benson, 100% a guy who's going to benefit from Connor missing his traditional 3 to 4 games. Gibson, I don't know that Gibson will ever honestly be a thing as long as Ramondre is healthy. Obviously, we have trouble predicting injury, but as long as Ramondre is a thing, I don't think Gibson ever gets above that tier 5 slot. I think he pretty much is permanently around 41 where you have him. Same with Algier. Unless Bijan gets shot or injured, he's just a handcuff. Same with Charbonnet. I wasn't impressed. I got a little bit scared of all I was hearing about Charbonnet, and to a small extent that possibly played a role in why I offloaded him last season. But I'm not impressed with what I've seen with Charbonnet. Once again, barring an injury or something crazy to KW3, Charbonnet is going to stay at that tier 5, 43 guy. I'm not even going to waste any more time and effort on Jaleel McLaughlin. If you've been following me and listening to my commentary on Twitter and everywhere else for long enough in the fantasy sphere, you know where I stand on that. Foreman actually got cut today, I think. So,
yes.
Yeah, Foreman's I don't know. That was kind of interesting because I feel like until Chubb comes back, like obviously Ford can carry the load, but do you really want Pierre Strong behind him? I feel like Foreman might just be like a guy they're just cutting just for like bureaucratic purposes, but they give him like a nice little vet contract in like the next few days for some depth if they can afford it and he's down for it. That way he can back up Strong and Ford. I mean, I could be wrong, but I still feel like he has a little bit left in the tank. But he also did
Yeah.
take a big hit from that injury a few weeks ago where they were afraid about his neck.
Hmm.
But yeah, Dobbins could potentially get bumped up. I know he's kind of left for dead with all the injuries, but hell, people are back on the Cam Akers thing, and him and Cam Akers are pretty much cut from the same cloth. So
Yeah.
there's a realm of possibility left there for Dobbins with the 28-year-old Gus Edwards being the only other person in front of him, but he's also got Vidal to contend with, and you and I are pretty high on Vidal, so we'd have to
Hmm.
see if he's got enough juice left to hold him off. But there's a world where Dobbins gets better than tier 5 if he can truly be healthy. Definitely a world where Corum, if Kyron Williams continues to have foot and lower body injuries, and if they're going to continue to put him on kick returns or punt returns or whatever, definitely a world where Corum starts getting some usage. And same for Lloyd, who's now comfortably the number 2 behind Jacob since A.J. Dillon's season ended before it started.
Okay, Bobby, moving on to wide receivers. My wide receiver ones are Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman Jr., and Malik Neighbors. Bobby, I think that the biggest pushback is going to be on Neighbors, but I mean, we saw how good Odell Beckham was with Eli Manning. Everybody used to crap on Eli Manning all the time. People are liking to crap on Daniel Jones right now, but sometimes you just have a receiver that's just so good that it just transcends the quarterback position. I think Neighbors could be that guy. I think he's going against an exploitable Vikings defense. So I'm going to stand on business, and I'm going to keep Malik Neighbors in the wide receiver 1 category. And the same with Olave, man, going against the Panthers defense. I know the Saints are not very good this year, but I just think that he's just too good of a player in this situation. I don't think there's going to be a lot of times you're going to be happy with Olave this year, but I think week 1 is one of the weeks I'm willing to risk it on him. What do you think, Bobby?
Yeah, Neighbors, the same things you mentioned, and then the only other thing I can add, I think the market's overcorrecting to Daniel Jones. I know right now he hasn't looked good recently, but it was only 2 years ago in the 2022 into 2023 season where he actually looked decent. They made a serious run at the title, the division title. They gave the Eagles hell, might have even beaten the Eagles at least one time. I think we'll definitely be able to tell, week 1 pretty early on if Neighbors is that type of guy like you mentioned who can, produce with a garbage quarterback. We'll find out really quickly. We'll find out if Daniel Jones is completely shot or not, if the changes the Giants made have paid off. We're gonna find those things out pretty quick, and it's gonna be something that either builds up over time or the wheels just fall off from here type thing. So yeah, week 1, can't really hate that too much. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't hate that either. Some people might, but other than Trey McBride, air targets, he's not going to be competing with anybody unless you get Connor or Benson involved in the receptions.
Agreed.
I'm not a Greg Dortch believer. Don't believe in him. Zay Jones
Mm-hmm.
is suspended for like the first 4 to 6 games of the season. I'm not a Michael Wilson guy. Harrison Jr., same thing as Neighbors, but he has a way better quarterback already from the start in Kyler Murray, so he doesn't have to prove that. He just has to prove as good of a receiver as people think, and I believe he is. The only thing that might be holding him back, just like Neighbors, is just that first pro game jitters. But, yeah, even for week 1, I don't think it's that crazy.
Love it, man. I love it. Let's move straight into the wide receiver 2s. We've got Amari Cooper, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Drake London, Zay Flowers, George Pickens, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Tank Dell, Debo Samuel, and DJ Moore. I can't get on the Puka wide receiver 1 train, even with them playing a beatable Detroit defense in a dome. I just can't get behind him just because he is coming in as injured as he's ever been. Cooper Kupp's coming in as healthy as he's been in a long time. and we're not going to see like the 15 to 10 targets that he saw his rookie year coming into the league. I just have a hard time seeing that. I have him at 15, so people like chill out. I'm not disrespecting him that much. I just bumped him down a little bit. I still think he's going to be great. I just don't think he's going to be that like top elite tier receiver. And then like I think Zay Flowers is the other one I kind of need to defend because I don't think a lot of people are pretty low on Zay Flowers in general this year, but this game is, and it's why we're doing week one. We're not doing fantasy just in general rankings. We're doing week one rankings. And that's because we saw in the AFC Championship game last year, Zay Flowers, which some people may, like around Baltimore and in the league, say that Zay Flowers lost the game because he fumbled it on the goal line. And the Chiefs got the ball back that won the game with L'Jarius Sneed punching the ball out of Zay Flowers' hands. I think Zay Flowers is coming in hot. He's coming in with something to prove. He's coming in with a vendetta. I think he can exploit the Chiefs' defense, which the Chiefs are really good, but we did take a step back losing L'Jarius Sneed. I think that Zay Flowers has enough in him, and I think with Lamar Jackson, he's going to want this game too. Chiefs, we'll see how they do against Derrick Henry, but if they do really commit to stopping Derrick Henry and they're going to be throwing the ball, then I think Mark Andrews and Zay are going to eat in this game.
Yeah, I don't have much to disagree with. I'm not a Puka guy, so you're not going to get flack from me for that, for all the reasons you said. And then, yeah, every other name on this list, those are the guys that you associate with, like, number 2 receiver on their team rankings and everything. So, yeah, I don't really have anything to disagree with there.
I love it, man. I love it. Let's move into the wide receiver threes. We've got Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, Curtis Samuel, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Jameson Williams, and T. Higgins. Starting to get into some of the wide receiver twos on their teams here with Stephon Diggs and Nico. I have them back-to-back just because same quarterback, same team, same issues, man. They're both going to be dealing with watered-down targets. I think Curtis Samuel, Ridley, and Kupp could all have some really nice games here. With Ridley being on a new team, but I think they've already said they want him to be in the Jamar Chase role, so I think he could have a big game here. Cooper Kupp against a very beatable defense. You're getting him as a wide receiver 3 here. Curtis Samuel is the proven guy that has had time to work with Josh Allen. I like Curtis Samuel a lot here week 1. There's a lot of high upside with these guys, and I feel like I would feel pretty good starting just about all of them.
Yeah, I'm not sneezing at starting any of these guys at all. Maybe for that first game, Kupp and Puka could be interchangeable depending on how long you think it takes Kupp to get back to his dominant role in the offense, or like have them back-to-back or close together. That's the only thing I have to offer, just depending on how you think it shakes out that first week, or if it takes Kupp maybe just a little bit of time to kind of beat back the progress Puka's made from last year, that type of thing. But yeah, especially Stephon and Nico right back-to-back until we see what it looks like with all three of him, Tank Dell, and Diggs on the field together until we see how that shakes out. That's a pretty fair assessment, I feel like.
My wide receiver 4s, these guys, I feel like I would start them because that there are good parts for all these guys. They have pretty good upsides, but there's some question marks here. That's Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Watson, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy, Jacoby Myers, Jordan Addison, Keon Coleman, Quentin Johnson, Cortland Sutton, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Gabe Davis. That's such an exploitable matchup for the Chargers against the Raiders, but how is the split going to be between McConkey and not Sutton, Johnston? I'm a McConkey guy. I know a lot of people that are Johnston guys. I don't know how it shakes out. It's probably going to be a run-heavy game, so I would just kind of watch and see what happens, not start any of the Chargers receivers if I can avoid it. There's some high upside guys here that could have, like Xavier Worthy could have a couple plays made for him to beat this pretty good Baltimore defense. So maybe he gets a touchdown and maybe 1 or 2 good catches, and then he's had a game. So these guys I'm okay starting, but if I can have any of those guys listed above, I'd rather take them over all these guys.
Yeah, I'm not starting Gabe Davis. I'd rather start Brian Thomas Jr. if that's an option. I just think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to come along a lot faster than people think. Me personally, like Gabe Davis, yeah, if he does have a game, it'll be early on because he's quickly going to get overtaken by uh, BTJ because people are going to find out real quick he's the truth type thing. Mike Williams is going to get beat out by Garrett Wilson. Smith and Jigba, I think he'll get better as the season goes along, but week one, DK is going to be that target hog for sure. Sutton might sneak up over at least Johnston for me, maybe even Coleman, and maybe even Addison, just based off volume, just based off like it's either going to be him or I feel like Franklin because Franklin already has the college connection with Knicks, but Sutton's like that sure-handed, safety blanket, like safe release valve, like Thielen was for Bryce Young last year. I could see that potentially being Sutton for Knicks this year. So maybe I'd have him just a tad bit higher. But, I mean, the Seattle defense is actually better than they get credit for.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't hate it too much for that. And, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with Worthy. If Worthy's going to get some action, it's going to be early on while Marquise is out. And it's going to be just gimmicky gadget shit to just kind of give them an edge over the Ravens. And then McConkey, yeah, it's going to be rough for the Chargers, I feel like, getting started until they kind of gel and figure it out. Right. And then, yeah, Hopkins might not even be starting. They're iffy on whether or not he's going to even be on IR. So Ridley definitely miles ahead of him. So, yeah, this is solid.
I love it, man. I love it. I'm glad we're agreeing there. Tight ends, I feel like the top 5 are a clear tier above the rest of them, especially here in week 1. We got Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, Trey McBride. Those are my main guys. Then I got George Kittle, Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, Pat Freiermuth, and Taysom Hill. Yeah, starting to get a little crazy there at the end, but a lot of people are going to try to write off Travis Kelce, and, Mark Andrews was hurt last year, but it's like, okay, these guys are in a huge divisional game, and they're like the main targets for their elite quarterbacks. Like, stop overthinking it. Don't play yourself. Still, if you have them, you start them. Kincaid against a very beatable defense. Laporte against very beatable defense. McBride against a very beatable defense. And the funny thing about it is 4 of these 5 tight ends play each other. McBride and Kincaid are in the same game. Kelce and Andrews are in the same game. As far as the other guys go, I feel like those are just the good players at those positions. Pat Freiermuth, I'm going to throw up there because that is the direct Arthur Smith revenge against the Falcons. He likes his tight ends, so I think Pat Freiermuth could catch a touchdown here. And then I am not a Taysom Hill guy at all. I can't stand Taysom Hill. I just think his like gimmicky, gadgety just stuff is just so annoying and just if you're an elite team, you probably don't have that guy. They just do it because they're in the NFC South, and the NFC South sucks. I'm going to throw him in here because they're against the Panthers. And so maybe he throws something, maybe he catches something, maybe he runs something. It's going to be a game where they can just kind of do whatever they want because both teams aren't very good.
Yeah, once again, just based off week 1, what do you think is going to happen week 1? Nothing about this should be controversial with the top 12. I can't pick anything to argue with.
Dude. I appreciate that. I appreciate that because I feel like you could have argued some stuff. So I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you're on my side. I'm starting
Not week 1. That's what I got to keep reminding myself. Week 1, just in a small sample size. Yeah. Like once you finish off rounding off the list, like people should see, and I'll even bring up the arguments why I don't think it's going to work out. Week 1.
Right. Right, then we got Brock Bowers, Dallas Goedert, Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, Juwan Johnson, Luke Musgrave, Noah Fant, Zach Ertz, Cade Otton, Tyler Conklin, and Ben Sinnott. There's nothing against Bowers here. I think Bowers is going to immediately get work. I just think he's going against the Harbaugh defense. I think there might be a lot of running in this game, so I don't know how much passing there is going to be for him. Goddard, he's just he's one of those fringe guys. He's always right there, like on the tight end 1, tight end 2 train. Hunter Henry, I mean, if anybody's going to score points against the Bengals, if the Bengals run it up, Hunter Henry is proven to be their red zone guy. So I like him. And then as far as the other guys, Schultz and Down, if I can avoid playing them, if you're in a 2 tight end league, like that's rough. But I really don't have much interest in any of these guys like after Henry, and I don't even really want to start Henry.
Yeah, as much as I want Brock Bowers to take off first game, I think he's going to be a slow burn for me. It'll take a little bit for them to gel, for them to figure shit out, and he'll get better as the season goes on. Goddard, he's a great tight end. There's just too many mouths to feed, especially with Saquon there now is my biggest thing. Like, you'd be happy if you had him and you'd start him because you don't have any other better option, but he's not going to be a top 12 guy for you anymore, unfortunately. Like you said, Hunter Henry, I don't understand it. It happened last year. I'm sure it'll happen again this year. The man would just randomly catch fucking touchdowns all day.
Yeah.
Schultz, definitely too many mouths now that they brought in Diggs. Cole Kmet maybe could sneak up there over maybe like Schultz, but nothing crazy because, once again, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out, like as talented as Williams appears to be and all the weapons and, great things he's been surrounded with. Can you just physically sustain feeding at an adequate level all these mouths that you have, even though you're great? And we know that you're great. Like, it's just a struggle for even talented quarterbacks to just give everybody some good targets and everything to really make them viable. So, yeah, especially starting out. Juwan Johnson, okay. Luke Musgrave. I like Luke Musgrave, but once again, a lot of guys to feed on the Packers. Yeah. If he does get better, it won't be week one. It'll be a slow burn. Fant hasn't been a thing for 3 years. Ertz, if he's going to do anything, it's going to be the first few weeks. But, yeah, week one, I failed to see it.
That's the one I was kind of like, maybe move Ertz up because maybe he's just a blanket because – Jaden Daniels grew up watching Zach Ertz, so maybe he's a Zach Ertz fan, and, he's just going to give him the easy targets that he doesn't send to McLaurin.
Right. Maybe put him over Fant, Musgrave simply because of volume, and Juwan simply because of volume. And once again, before he gets hurt with a season-ending injury and Sinnott takes over, he's got to do something. Otten's always underrated, but once again, it would be like not week one. He has to take some time to get burning. Conklin, I don't think, is going to be a big guy on the Giants. He's still with the Jets, I believe.
Yeah.
Hell, I think Lazard gets fed before he does simply because of the connection. Not like a diss on him, but just because Rodgers wanted Lazard in half of Green Bay with him when he went to New York. So it's like – Conklin hasn't really taken off in like the 3 years people thought he was, and Sinnott's definitely going to be a thing. But, yeah, it's going to be like halfway through the season or midway when Ertz gets hurt. It won't be right off the jump.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you, everybody, for watching. If you guys want more fantasy content, me and Bobby do every Tuesday evenings at 8 Central Time. We do weekly waiver wire ads, so make sure you guys tune into those. We answer your guys' questions. We'll answer your questions again, if you remember. Fantasy Sports Advice Network. Make sure you guys check them out over there. Download their app. They've got a website too. Head over there. Let them know that we sent you. We'll talk to you. I think there's some Fantasy Pros guys over there, IDP Plus guys over there. All these big names of fantasy, they're all over there. So make sure you hop in. You can ask them questions. We'll answer. They'll answer. It's just a great resource to use. Great community. We're just getting started. We found these guys actually at the Fantasy Football Expo. Love their stuff, so we're all in on them this year. And if you're into fantasy sports, it's an app that you have to have. It's over Facebook, it's over Instagram, it's over all those type of apps. Over Reddit. I know a lot of people that used to use that Reddit a lot for like fantasy Q&A. This is going to completely take over that Reddit field. Once all those guys found out about this Fantasy Sports Advice Network, it's just so much better than the Reddit ways. So check that out, please. And we'll do this every week, too. So make sure you tune in to listen to me and Bobby and all of the content we have at Better and Green. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you later. Peace, guys.
Peace.
You better start listening to the Better and Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome to Better and Green, eh? To Better and Green, eh? To Better and Green, eh? Listening and cash out, that's what it's all about. Come Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover all spots from the bottom to the top. Hey, shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome to our podcast. Better win green.